Joining us now for World Brief and the review of some of the headlines of today's newspapers from around the world is Adefemi Akinsanya. Good morning. How are you? I hear you are in Trump territory.
Good morning, Dr. Rubin.
Good morning.
I am. We are in West Palm Beach, Florida. We are just a stone's throw away from Trump's Mar-a-Lago official residence. You can just see it illuminated in gold just over my shoulder there. That is, of course, the famous Mar-a-Lago Trump residence. And just to my left, there's a heavily barricaded bridge, which is keeping other people at bay. I say other people, we are alone, very much alone on this bridge. It's just gone 2:47 in the morning here in West Palm Beach, Florida. But I'm going to make sure I speak up and speak loud so that if Trump is awake, which I think he is, and if he's watching Arise News, which I know he likes to do, I'm sure he'll be invited us to breakfast to celebrate his win at any moment now. So we're just ready for that phone call. That being said, we do know that Donald Trump has had quite a very busy few days since his historic re-election. Now, in addition to him making tons of phone calls to 70 world leaders, he has also made a huge decision in building his team. He has decided to appoint Susan Wiles as his chief of staff. And if everything goes ahead to plan, once he is, of course, inaugurated, Susan Wiles will become the first woman in US history to be a president's chief of staff. So historic there. A bit of background on Susan Wiles herself. She is 67 years old and she is a veteran of Florida politics. She played a huge role in Trump's successful campaign in the state back in 2016. She also played a vital role in Governor Ron DeSantis' campaign back in 2018. And they did have a falling out, her and Ron DeSantis, which did lead to some kind of breakdown of the relationship from her and the Trump fold. But clearly she's been brought back in. She was brought back in 2020. And again here in 2024 in this election, she has clearly delivered Florida to Trump and managed a successful campaign, and he has rewarded her with a historic appointment as his chief of staff. It will be interesting to see how well they work together in the White House. Looking at recent history, clearly they've had a good relationship when it comes to campaigns and strategy. But we do know that if we cast our minds back to Donald Trump's first time in office, he went through quite a few chief of staffs, 4 actually. So it will be interesting to see how this woman, who will be tasked with managing the operations of the White House, will deal with Donald Trump. It does, if we are to take some of her words, she said that she doesn't really focus on controlling Trump himself. Rather, it is her priority to control everything around Donald Trump. So it will be interesting to see what that dynamic looks like come the White House. Now, we've spoken so much about the next president. We could be guilty of forgetting that there is, of course, a current administration still in power. President Joe Biden did come out and speak to the people in the White House Rose Gardens yesterday. It's the first time he's made a formal appearance since Kamala Harris's resounding defeat at the election polls. And when he did speak to his team in the Rose Garden, of course addressing the world's media, he didn't speak for long, but he did speak in quite a dignified and presidential way. Let's take a listen to what he had to say.
Campaigns are contests of competing visions. The country chooses one or the other. We accept the choice the country made. I've said many times, you can't love your country only when you win. You can't love your neighbor only when you agree. Something I hope we can do, no matter who you voted for, is see each other not as adversaries, but as fellow Americans.
So again, very, very diplomatic speech there coming from Joe Biden, who has been bookended by Trump. Really, if you realize that it is Trump who was president immediately before Joe Biden, and Trump again who will be president immediately after. So he has talked about how he has instructed his team to work with the Trump team to initiate and facilitate a clear and peaceful transition of power. This is obviously some grace that was not extended to him when he became president 4 years ago. Trump, of course, did not welcome him into to the White House, did not attend his inauguration, but it is clearly not going to be repeated in this instance. President Joe Biden will, of course, welcome him back into the White House, will be attending his inauguration, as will Kamala Harris. And so it does show, again, the different attitudes when it comes to losing an election and the type of sportsmanship and grace that you would expect from politicians. Now, stepping away from US politics now, and if we look at this latest update from Liam Payne's death, the 31-year-old did die last month after falling from the third floor window of a hotel in the Argentinian capital, Buenos Aires. 3 people have been charged in connection to his death. One person, who is the person who worked closely with Liam Payne, he has been charged with the abandonment of a person, which led to death, and also has been charged with facilitating and procuring drugs for Liam Payne, as has a hotel employee and another individual. None of them have been named as yet, but all of them have played some role, according to these charges, in the facilitation of illicit drugs that we do believe that Liam Payne took in the moments before he unfortunately died. So we will be following updates from that story. And then lastly, if we move to the African continent, outgoing president of Ghana, Nana Akufo-Addo, has been facing some backlash on social media. That's after he unveiled a statue of himself in the western region of Ghana, and outside a hospital in Sekondi. Now, he says that he has delivered the lion's share of his promises to the Ghanaian people. He says that he has delivered 80% of his promises to the Ghanaian people, and clearly feels as though he's entitled to a statue. But to many people on social media, to many people in Ghana, they feel as though this is grandstanding, this is not becoming of a president, and essentially not something that he should be spending his last moments in office doing. As we do know that Ghana will be going to the polls in December, on the 7th of December, to elect a new president, and clearly Nana Akufo-Addo doesn't want to be forgotten with this statue. I think it's bronze, isn't it? A bronze statue outside that hospital in Sekondi. I'd love to hear your thoughts on these stories before we go over to the papers.
My reaction to Nana Akufo saying that he had delivered 80% of his intended plans for the Ghanian. Na lie. Na big lie. Nana Akufo-Addo has made Ghana worse off, and the empirical facts are there. Ghana has become a place where protests have become more frequent. The facts are there everywhere you go. The economy is worse off. A lot of bad economic decisions, manhandling of COVID. So he doesn't deserve the statue. But anyway, that's the height of hubris as far as I'm concerned. You doing a statue in your honor? That's the height of hubris. You know, it reminds me of what we call the lizard theory. When he falls down on the ground, the lizard shakes his head. If nobody praise me, I will praise myself. If nobody praise me, I will praise myself. That's what he's doing. No. Let's forget him. He's just funny. It reminds me of one governor in Nigeria, you know, that built a statue everywhere for himself. Anyway, where is he today? Moving on. I think Susan Wiles is a very steady hand. And Trump got this right. If you dial back to what she did, you know, with Ron DeSantis' campaign and what she has also done, and how she's been able to build a very disciplined campaign. This is Trump as a person that likes to, you know, move around a lot. He doesn't like to stick to script. But to a large extent, she was able to discipline him during the campaign. And she showed that kind of temperament. You know, when he was having his victory party, he called her forward to come speak, but no. She chose not to speak. She said, the spotlight is not about me. That shows the discipline that she has. And I think she's going to bring a lot. Owing to the fact that Trump in the past, he has used the likes of Ryan Priebus, you know, which I thought was a showboy, and they didn't last in the end and all of that. And he went through a lot of people for chief of staff. But I think she's a steady hand that she will do some very good work for him. And to the Biden speech, it's a very, very appreciated one. And I hope Trump will learn, because this was Trump when he was beaten 4 years ago, scattered everything, was raging with fire and brimstone, even told his supporters to go disrupt the Capitol. But you can see how they accepted the outcome of the result. Does Trump think the Democrats are not hurting from the loss? They are hurting a great deal. Nobody likes to lose an election. But they have accepted it in good faith. They showed maturity. They've even decided to attend his inauguration. These are all the things Trump will never do for somebody else. That's why I don't understand the man. And I don't understand his personal conduct. And I can't agree with him on personal values.
So fantastic news. We're seeing the first female chief of staff in the United States. And, not just she's a woman, she is a very able and qualified woman. I know there's a lot of skepticism around her because people are worried about the fact that she's not a Washington insider. But I think this is exactly what makes her a fantastic choice for somebody who's only going to serve one term. Because, of course, we do know that this term is going to see a lot of back and forth, backbiting and so forth within the Republican Party as the succession battle ultimately is going to begin. So somebody who is clearly not interested in succeeding him for a candidacy as president, somebody who has been consistent over the years, somebody whose track record, they're saying that she's the face behind his great comeback. So I think she's a great strategist to have in the corner, and also just love the fact that Donald Trump has immense respect for her and listens to her, because there's a number of times, if you play back some of his rallies, there's a number of times I didn't know who Susan was, right? But he would say stuff, then he'd be like, Susan, am I allowed to say that, Susan? Am I allowed to say that? So, so she was there. Now, if you look at Trump's last campaign, it was a mess. There were leaks, there was controversy, there was scandal, there was all sorts throughout the campaign, his tenure, excuse me. If you look at this campaign, listen, still a lot of Trump controversy, but nothing compared to what we've known Donald Trump for in the past. So it means that she was able to contain especially a lot of the infighting that we see happening. You saw somebody like John Kelly, who's a former chief of staff, and all the things he had to say about Donald Trump during this campaign. I don't think she's the type of person who, even if she fell out with Donald Trump, would come out later to try and slander him and say all sorts of things about him. So, we'll keep eyes on that. Over to Joe Biden, who I feel absolutely terrible for at the moment, because he seems to have become the Democrats seem to be blaming him for their loss, because they're saying that, well, if Joe Biden had just stepped down at the right time, we would have had enough time to build the type of campaign that we needed for this particular election. And then for him to come out and all of a sudden have so much pep in his step, and almost some people said that he seemed to be gloating in the moment. That's one take on it. So I think for Joe Biden, I do hope that his last few weeks in office will be weeks where he'll be able to sort of salvage whatever is left of his legacy and just try and bring the Democratic Party back together as they prepare for the next 4 years. Well, I believe Senate elections will be in another 2 years. So, as they prepare for the next 2 years and, of course, next 4 years. So, wishing them all the best.
Okay, let's start with our next neighbor in Ghana. Now, in Aristotelian tragic drama, the kind we have enacted, Larutimi's economy, there's a passage there about power and the abuse of it, an obsession, delusion about power. And there's a passage in that economy play which says to Mr. Tortoise, there's a parable about Tortoise. And it says, Mr. Tortoise going on a senseless journey. And you say to him, Mr. Tortoise. He will say, not until I've been disgraced. Not until I've been disgraced. Now, Akufo-Addo, President Akufo-Addo, is campaigning in the Western Province. He's going on a thank you tour across the country, and he's boasting that he has left behind a very strong legacy. And when he got to Sekondi, the minister in that region had already put up this, self-adulation symbol. Now, I don't think that President Akufo-Addo has ever any reason. I know he's campaigning for the new for the NPP, the New Patriotic Party, where he has his vice president running. But to go on to this Ozymandias, I don't know whether President Akufo-Addo has read the poem by Shelley titled Ozymandias. I don't want to quote, to save time. But these are relevant references from him in literature. Because if he's a good student, he will realize that in history, leaders who erect statues unto themselves, they often end up as Ozymandias. Those statues, there are many Ghanaians that are now saying that as soon as Akufo-Addo leaves office, that statue should be brought down. But President Akufo-Addo is also our in-law. So he has Nigerian tendencies. He may have learned that in Nigeria, this is how Nigerian leaders erect temples unto themselves. You know the famous story about Iberiberism in a part of Nigeria. But I get that the lessons of history will eventually catch up with President Akufo-Addo, under whose watch the legacy that he leaves behind is high cost of living crisis in Ghana. Another legacy that he has left behind is the complication of the phenomenon of doomsaw. But anyway, Ghana is going to the polls very shortly, and I think that the people of Ghana will make up their minds as to what they want. That's that about that. Very quickly, the chief of staff of President Biden. Well, you are very close to Mar-a-Lago. There's a place there where Biden sits. And I understand that since he won the election, there has been a rush to that club, the Mar-a-Lago club. Everybody is going there. Tulsi Gabbard, Donald Trump Jr., Robert F. Kennedy, Tim Barack, all of them, they want to be noticed. Everybody is there to hold court. They are struggling for seats in typical Nigerian fashion. Isn't that how it happens? Everybody wants an appointment. But what we know is that President Trump has resolved that he would, reward persons who have been loyal to him in the last 2 years. But people are jumping over each other. If you gain access to the place, please help us take videos of some of the people who have decided to relocate to that golf club so that they can get noticed. However, about the woman who has now been appointed, Susie Wiles. Well, she's not new to politics. She has been there since 1979 as a political consultant. In addition, she's an Episcopalian. In 2022, during the midterm elections, she was even considered the chief of staff to Donald Trump at a time when people, were trying to blame Donald Trump for the losses of the Republican Party in the midterm elections. In 2018, she served as a deputy strategist for Ron DeSantis in Florida, but they fell out in 2019. But that was before Ron DeSantis had described her as the best in the business. In other words, I'm saying that, she comes to the job with very strong credentials as an insider in the Trump category. But a lot to be seen in terms of what she does. In fact, she's so strong in that Trump camp that another woman wanted the job, Brooke Rollins. But Brooke Rollins had to step down. But she too, we're told, is going to get something else. As for President Biden, well, everybody has been blaming him as the cause of the massive loss of the Democratic Party in this election. But he's trying to, be conciliatory and also reassure people. He says, well, you don't remember your country only when you win. Loyalty is not about you winning. And he says tomorrow will be better. He's given the Democratic base in the Rose Garden. And you know the Rose Garden. That's where they say sweet nothings. But he succeeded, in reassuring the public, I hope. And he used the opportunity to talk about his achievements, about the economy. He defended himself that he has done very well with the economy and that Kamala Harris has run a very courageous race. But people say, perhaps, if he had withdrawn earlier as an 81-year-old great-grandfather, maybe the fortunes of the Democratic Party would have been different. But he made the point that the American people have decided, and it will ensure a smooth transition, because that is what the American people deserve. So he said. Back to you.
Well, thank you very much for all of your comments, all of your analysis. Thank you very much. Let us pick up now and take a look at some international papers, see what's happening on the front page of the papers around the world. We'll start in Nigeria with the front page of This Day. And if you take a look at the front page of This Day, this morning, it leads with news that Edo State Governor Godwin Obaseki says the EFCC may pick him up this week, next week, very soon, though he has insisted that he has nothing to hide. He says that They have written all sorts of so-called silly petitions to him, and he says essentially, well, I'm ready when you're ready to come and get me. So we'll keep an eye on that. This day also has President Tinubu saying that the Nigerian economy is gradually rebounding. He made those comments at the editors' conference, which took place also yesterday on Thursday in Bayelsa State. Now, editor-in-chief of Arise Media Group, Prince Nduka Obaibena, was in attendance and is also featured on that front cover. Moving on to the New Telegraph this morning, and that paper leads with news of the confirmation of the emergence of a new terror group named Lukarawa in Sokoto and in Kebbi states. Now, the Daily Trust now, it also leads with news from that terror group and how they've been terrorizing communities, specifically in Sokoto State. That's what the Daily Trust has focused its first frontline page on. The group has reportedly imposed laws and fines and have put members in a very volatile and scary position in those communities. And it's believed that members of this group are from countries outside of Nigeria, including Libya, Mali, and the Niger Republic even. If we move on now to the Vanguard and the Punch, both of those papers feature serial grid collapses on their front pages. Now, the Punch in particular says the federal government has ordered overhauls that will lead to a 20-hour daily power by 2027. I mean, how convenient is that? Right in time for the next election in Nigeria. And this is, of course, as Bayelsa State Governor Duro Diri says that he has been lamenting over the state's 3-month blackout. Just a terrible situation going on with electricity in Nigeria. If we move on to the Daily Independent now, it follows on from this day's look at the economy with news that economic reforms are starting to yield results, with news also that the unlocking of $1 billion across the energy value chain is on the way, according to the federal government. Lastly, if you take a look at the front page of The Guardian Nigeria this morning, it leads with Nigerians in the diaspora are creating demand and income for teachers in Nigeria. Essentially, entrepreneurial teachers in Nigeria who take up private gigs or private lessons or any type of extra use of their resources, of their skills. They're making more than twice their monthly salaries with their side gigs. And for those who have clientele made up of Nigerians in the diaspora, they're earning even more money. And so I do think that this is something that would be welcomed by the teachers who have the ability and the access to be able to reap the monies from this new type of market, because we speak so much about the plight of teachers in Nigeria, how they're not adequately protected, compensated. So you can imagine that many people are looking for side gigs, and according to this front page article in The Guardian, it is manifesting good returns. Let's move on to some African papers now. And Ghana's Daily Graphic leads with the government's, once again, its parliament is hanging in the balance as parliament is adjourned yet again. This is because MPs from the MPP have boycotted sitting in parliament yesterday once again, causing this suspension. And because there weren't enough members in the House, they didn't have the numbers to make decisions. So going back and forth there, you'll notice that they didn't mention on the front cover the blowback from President Akufo-Addo's statue there. But albeit that's what's going on in Ghana. And then in Kenya, the Daily Nation of Kenya says that MPs are giving William Ruto a blank check to continue borrowing against the legal debt ceiling of 55% of Kenya's GDP. Kenya's debt, public debt rather, stands at 11 trillion shillings. That's 70% of its GDP, far higher than what it should be. So again, William Ruto not in the strongest of positions just then. And then if we move over to the United Kingdom, the Financial Times has a picture of the extended Trump family with a headline which quotes Joe Biden calling for a cooling of political temperatures, as we've already discussed. And lastly, if you take a look at the front page of the Daily Express this morning, we've got Prince William, who has shared that he has had the hardest year of his life, opening up about both his father, King Charles, and his wife, Catherine, the Princess of Wales, both of them having cancer diagnoses and having to deal with those cancer battles. Back to you in the studio. Love to hear your thoughts.
Thank you very much, Adefemi Akinsanya. And please go into the club and let us see who and who is there scrambling to get an appointment.